Okay, so a little while ago, I released an animation I made with my brother detailing these 6 main modes of attention. And this time I want to go through them in more detail. This isn't exactly going to be a guided meditation, but it will be like a listen along and do these exercises with me to find these different modes of attention. So we'll require some engagement. And before we start going into our phenomenology, our experience, and finding these modes of attention or making these modes of attention, I want to explain a little bit more about them and how I think important it is to recognize these different types of mind, essentially how applicable they are. I must say that these modes of attention are active, are ways of kind of behavior of the mind, structuring of the mind that apply to all the senses. So that's, seeing and hearing and feeling and smelling and tasting and thinking as well, ways of thinking. This is a really interesting way to understand the different modes of attention. I think it's very important to go into the theory, to update our concepts and to think deeply about the world, but to make sure that our conceptual, intellectual understandings are not disconnected from our immediate experience and an embodied way of living. So this recording is describing ideas that I hope resonate with you, connect with you, but I want you to stay grounded in your immediate experience when you listen and notice how your experience changes and do the exercise to feel the difference in these modes of attention, to really bring a greater awareness and to be able to track them over the course of the days, the weeks, your life, and in other people. And so we're going to explicitly go through each one of them, but I would really advise that after doing these exercises and finding them, you then bring this out of just meditation mode and see how you are constantly throughout the day in one of these modes of attention, no matter what activity you're doing. It doesn't have to just be meditation. And I think analyzing these different modes of attention through kind of a conceptual lens as well, through thinking, is quite revealing in terms of how we think, different ways we can think, as we bring these different modes of attention to different topics. I think there's some explanation here as to why people will disagree on a particular topic, because they're approaching it with a different mode of attention. So they're thinking in different ways. The structure of their thinking is different. Some people just have a single pointed, focused attention approach. So they're just narrowing down, singling in on an idea, on a point, sort of being reductionistic in that way. Other people might be more scattered and connecting the dots and doing more lateral thinking, sort of going less deep, so seemingly, but actually broader. So I think what I'm detailing here has a lot of explanatory power along so many aspects of our life and the spiritual path, making sense of why we come to different conclusions, why we believe in different things, why different states of mind that we can get into, and attempted conclusions or non-attempted conclusions even. As we'll find these different modes of attention, once you become aware of them and then have unlocked accessibility to them, so something to map them, to find them, to then be able to purposely go into them, then helps you get into a broader array of states of mind, to meditate, become concentrated from these different modes of attention will lead to different states. For example, the jhanas. These different modes of attention help us to get into the different jhanas. I think the different jhanas actually require these different modes of attention. And in instructions for cultivating those states, this is often not explicitly described. I don't hear others talking about the modes of attention so much. They talk about other features of the experiences, the jhana factors and such like that, but how to get concentrated, how to shape the mind, how to approach one's own experience or reality with these different modes helps reveal different qualities of experience. So please listen along and be ready to follow these instructions. I suggest starting with eyes open. Please don't close your eyes or go into a typical meditation mindset yet, but be comfortable. And we're going to begin with the first mode of attention that I name general attention. Right, so you're sitting, eyes open, you're listening, and you can be just how you are, just total normie mode. And maybe you're looking around. You're not super focused on anything. This is our kind of default mode of attention. We tend to gravitate towards being in a lot of the time. It's not too zoomed in. It's not too defocused. It's this nice Goldilocks zone that helps us amble around in the world and engage in many activities, not super scrupulously, but before you attempt to be concentrated or do anything, this is the mode of attention. It's often overlooked, and it can change. So I want you to just get a sense of this general mode of attention. Yeah, again, it's not too focused on anything. Neither are you really absent-minded, especially drowsy or anything like that. You're just generally awake, very normal mode. So taking a moment to have the metacognition, become aware, this extra awareness of what state you're in. Right? So these modes of attention are kind of independent. Nothing is really independent of anything. Nothing is totally independent. But more or less, very, more or less more so stable despite changes in a lot of other phenomenal qualities. So the modes of attention are not about what exactly you're hearing or seeing or feeling or thinking, for example. So all that content can be changing, but the mode of attention can stay the same. Or your mode of attention can change in regards to a quote-unquote same content, very sort of similar object in awareness. If you change your mode of attention in relation to that object, it will reveal different qualities about that object. You'll be perceiving that object in a new light. So with each mode of attention as well, I'm going to help facilitate that you find it in your immediate sense fields. Right, so I think this is very obvious with seeing, general attention. Then I want to point out what it's like to interact with each mode of attention not just in the immediate senses, seeing, hearing, and feeling predominantly. This will apply to smelling and tasting as well. But then also the thinking. So the types of thoughts we could have and how we sort of bring to bear our attention on ideas. When you're thinking with general attention, this is not deep questioning, it's not deep investigation or curiosity even. It's kind of working with your assumptions about how you kind of presume what you already know and kind of getting it, and sort of day-to-day not great challenging of concepts or ideas, stuff like that. So general attention is about engaging in casual tasks. Doing things casually is a good way to describe it. Right. As we can see, it can be all too easy to just always be defaulting to general attention, and it's comfortable, it's functionable, but it may not reveal new qualities of ourselves, the world, to our minds that help us develop and grow, or update our thinking and understanding of reality. Okay, so that was general attention, and now I'll invite you to close your eyes, and we'll move on to the second mode of attention, single-pointed attention. Now, you can be engaged in general attention with eyes closed, but I think it's quite easy to find with eyes open. But with eyes closed, now, if you try to single in and focus on your breathing at your nostrils, and even go more specific in your right nostril, maybe there's a more prominent sensation associated with the breath. To focus in like that, to highlight a very minute and one single object of attention, is to now start utilizing single pointed attention. And so you can get focused on the breath, the nose, the right nostril, particular ardent sensation there. Give you some time to really attend with single pointed attention. Become familiar with what that's like. Now, this mode of attention is the mode people mostly think of when they try to be concentrated. They think this is how you be concentrated. You engage in this single focused way, and you just have to hold one gestalt, one mind object, highlighted in attention, and pay attention to nothing else, be aware of nothing else but your chosen object. And so you try to get really concentrated in this way. And it's true, you can get concentrated in this way, and that leads to particular types of concentration. But it's not the only mode of which to be concentrated from. Actually, we can be concentrated from all these different modes of attention. A lot of people don't know that. For example, when they're trying to do the jhanas, they think, well, jhanas are very concentrated states, so I must, for all of them, be engaged in this second mode, single-pointed attentional mode, and only that. Right? So they're trying to focus and home in on, exclude everything but what they're concentrated on. And that's actually not how this works. That's really going to act as a big barrier to entering many of the jhanas. So I would actually correlate first jhana with a general attentional mode. You have to be a bit vaguer, a bit softer, not so exclusive, to feel the pleasurable piti all over the body. You can't be doing this hard, strenuous, constrained, focused mode of attention like you're just focusing on the breath. And if you don't know this, then yeah, you're going to be actually trying to corral your mind in a way that is not conducive for entering into the vaster, more pleasurable states. So first jhana, it's actually better to have this more general attention and see if you can become familiar, find what that's like with eyes open, close your eyes and retain it. And the reason why we want that general attention for the first jhana is because pleasure, first jhana is marked by pleasurable body sensations. Pleasure requires not looking too hard at something, actually. If you try to examine anything of beauty or pleasure, something like a painting, a landscape, or even a person, or a song or a movie, right? And you try to pick out an individual paint stroke, an individual dot of color, or musical note, or individual hair on someone's head, or like a more individual sort of texture of a crumb of a piece of food, for example. You actually won't find the pleasure or the beauty by relating to it in that way. We have to zoom out a bit more. We have to be sort of more general, see something at a distance, So pleasure and beauty require us to be more abstract thinking, and that's why I recommend some more general attention for trying to get into jhana 1 with the piti, the pleasurable body sensations all over the body. And you can be concentrated with that general attention. You can hold it and stabilize the content with it, right? It's a way of relating. It's finding a particular lens, a particular level of resolution and holding it there. That's a skill. But jhana 2 is much more constrained. Jhana 2, I would correlate with this second mode of attention, with single-pointed attention. Jhana 2 is about more narrowing in on the affect of a real potent glee, and in some sense it can feel more constricting, and it's actually like more powerful than the first jhana. And it also links with, in the stages of insight, this arising and passing, that kind of peak stage of insight, the peak experience, right? So there's this correlation with arising and passing, stages of insight, this second mode of attention, single pointed attention, and second jhana, right? You can sort of map those onto each other. Right, so the example we've used here is focusing on the single point on the breath, a particular granular sensation of the breath. And this single pointed attention is exclusive, very exclusive, in terms of we're really not concerned with anything other than the one object that we're focused on. So we can see how that way of relating can influence our thinking in trying to really drill down, single out, focus on a point, a particular point, an intellectual point, right? Trying to make a point and be so all in on this and then ignoring everything else. I think it can correlate with a reductionistic mindset, right? Trying to drill down on what is fundamental, trying to get to, it's this. And I think what's interesting is when that way of thinking is used to interpret the other modes of attention or other states we might experience. Well, we go through all these different cycles and changing through these different modes as we naturally, organically do, right? for this exercise, we can purposely try to curate each mode of attention, but you come to see that even without purposely, consciously willing it to happen, you will just be in these different modes of attention. And then we may have some kind of deep insight, enter into some state, and then after the fact, interpret that state through the different modes of attention. And they'll have different things to say. And so a lot of this talk about trying to find the ground of being is to use a single pointed mode of attention through the intellect to really reduce and come down on what is seemingly fundamental. Oh, it's all this one thing. Fill in the blank. It's all consciousness, it's all love, it's all God, it's all me, whatever you want to put there. And I think that's just to subtly miss the mark and not realize the slippage from one mode of attention to another mode of attention. Because a lot of actually the hallmark awakenings that we have are not explicitly done through a single pointed attentional mode, where when they happen, there's no great defining, but then we reinterpret the experience. And so what do we take out of it? Okay, this revealed to me it's all this. And a big part of what I'm trying to point out in my teachings is to see the bigger picture, to see all the oscillations of attention and consciousness and the validity of the different perspectives, which would get one out of pure reductionism, to see the interrelatedness of all the content and the modes of attention and states of mind and ideas, which will bring us out of trying to isolate any one thing. And then this is the thing about this single mode of attention is it's kind of blind. It's not recognizing the greater context. And it will have its limits. So this is going to lead us now into the third mode of attention, which is divided attention. So as you're trying to pay attention to the breath, this is a very common experience, something else will catch our attention, right? Something other, a distraction. So we're trying to focus on the somatic sensation somewhere, and then maybe another somatic sensation calls our attention and we quickly go there, we notice a pain and we come back. Or it's of a different sense modality. It's a thought, which is like a sound or a mental image, right? Or a sound in the environment calls our attention away. When we're trying to just pay attention to one thing, but our attention is being split between two objects, this is divided attention. So the exercise to highlight this, I ask you to pinch your thumb and your index finger together in classic yoga mudra symbols. When you Google people meditating, they're all making this hand sign. And do that on both hands. Now, I want you to pay attention to the sensation of your thumb touching your index finger on your right hand and get that in focused attention with the single pointed attention mode, right? And now simultaneously try to also pay attention in just as much detail of your thumb and your index finger on your left hand as well. And try to hold both sensations in detail in attention at once. Right, so you're doing that. And now what you should find is that actually you cannot pay attention in equal detail with this single pointed attention mode to both at the same time. If you really pay attention, what's happening is your attention will be oscillating, be rapidly switching between the two. While one goes into focused attention, the other sensation, in the other hand, will be in peripheral awareness. And then when you try to pay attention to that other thumb and finger sensation, it will go into focused attention, and then the original thumb and finger sensation will go into peripheral awareness, and they'll be switching between focused attention and peripheral awareness. Really try this, really find this. This is something really key to understand about the nature of mind. That you can only pay attention in detail to one gestalt, one mind object at a time. And there's a trade-off between sensory clarity and attentional specificity and the breadth of your attention. So the more detail you want to focus on, the less is included in the scope of your attention. And more is driven into peripheral awareness. Right? And if you want to pay attention to more, for example, say you want to pay attention to the whole hand, and you zoom out a bit, there's going to be a trade-off in terms of sensory clarity. You're not going to feel in as much detail, as consciously, as saliently, all the micro sensations of where the nail meets the skin, and on the left side and the right side of each finger and stuff like that. So divided attention is about trying to hold two objects of mind in attention that haven't yet been really reconciled or properly connected, and yet there's a bit of a tussle and a fight, and sort of switching between two is that, well, we need to include both, but they're not linked up, and so it doesn't feel smooth like that. And divided attention, this mode isn't yet really recognizing the periphery, though. That's what the next mode of attention will be about. It's still trying to force the mind into single-pointed attention mode, but there's a discrepancy, and so it can't stay there. This is like a mode of conflict, in a way. It could be thought of that like that. But it's also a big juncture point. So being in this divided attention mode then starts opening awareness up that, oh wait, there is more to pay attention to. There are other salient phenomena, and it can bring you into the other modes of attention. So it's not like a great place to be concentrated from, but it brings opportunity to then either go back into single-pointed attention mode, where you decide, okay, no, we are just going to focus on this one thing and actually not be distracted or bring in or try to incorporate that other second object. Or it can lead you into the next mode of attention, or even actually the other modes after it as well. It's kind of a state of becoming aware of your cognitive dissonance. So divided attention is this great juncture point to see the positive in it. Okay, so moving on to the next mode of attention, the fourth one. This is what I call dispersed attention, and this is when we really go into the peripheral awareness because of the juxtaposition revealed by the divided attention that, hang on, there is more going on than just what I was trying to have in single-pointed attention mode. Hang on, there is actually more greater awareness, sort of outer on the periphery, on the edges of experience. We open up into that, but that content is quite murky and messy, actually. So to demonstrate how to get into that mode, ask you to kind of just let go of trying to pay attention to anything, not the breath, nose, not the sensations at your fingers. And we have this kind of more open view, try to take in maybe the whole of experience, but it's cloudy and it's wishy-washy, and nothing is in high fidelity, in sort of rich detail, right? But we are now noticing, making more salient, that peripheral awareness is an aspect of our experience, and that, that's actually kind of been there the whole time, wasn't made so conscious, so obvious. And we really get into that. It's a mode often more coupled with being sort of sluggish and lethargic and, fatigued and tired. The sort of drowsy, and when we're going to be trailing off to sleep, we'll pass through this mode of attention. So it's kind of this great fog out and dissociation mode. So to give yourself a taste, an immediate taste, see if you can kind of emulate those states of mind. Really, just kind of give yourself permission to be a bit vaguer, not looking at anything in particular, specific. Just kind of get this first-hand taste of each of these modes, which brings on the metacognition, the ability to recognize when each of them is happening. And so this one's really just no detail. Broad, open, in some way too broad. So you know how before I was saying there's a trade-off between breadth of attention and sensory clarity, right? We can either try to zoom in and pay attention to more detail, or zoom out, open the scope, and we'll have less detail. This is to go in that direction. To give yourself that permission and defocus the mind. Kind of have that no mind, dumb mind. And you can intuit what it's like to think through this mode of attention, this way of relating that's just very chill in a way, not concerned about getting into the weeds or the details or arguing a specific point, sort of cliche hippie stoner energy, just like, yeah, that's your opinion, man. But you can be there. It's relaxing to a degree, but it's not like you aren't still afflicted and affected by the vicissitudes of life. You're just, quote unquote, choosing not to pay attention, drowning things out. Could be very unconscious that that's happening. So, and you can see, some people, gravitate to each different state of mind. You can see how different people spend more or less time in these different modes of attention. I think they all have their value, they all have their place. They all bring something different. This dispersed mode of attention is suited for the third jhana, sort of deep peacefulness, where we let ourselves just sink, relax, release. It's all very peripheral content. And be in great peace. And again, you can be concentrated from here as well. You can stabilize it. And you can also refine it and simplify it. You may, to better find this mode of attention, you may actually want to think down, think out, pay attention out and down. Right, and just keep going out and out and out in that direction. And with this mode of attention, we lose focal center clarity. Yeah, everything is a bit muddy. There's a deficit in coherence. We're likely to be tired when we're in this mode of attention, but you don't have to be. You can actually be awake, quite awake, still with this mode of attention. Okay, after spending a little bit of time in that, let's move on to the next mode of attention. And so eventually we may wake up more and realize, hang on, we need to pay attention in more detail, actually. So then we go on to scattered attention. And this is a bit like divided attention with quick oscillations between noticing different objects, but it's more than just two. It's many, 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 and it's attention not staying on any one particular object for very long, but you're trying to cover the whole array of experience, and you're flipping between point, sensation, idea, thought, task, behavior, whatever it might be, and going from one to the other, to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. There's many, many things going on. I think we will come back into this mode of attention with a kind of a panic and a determination. Like, oh shit, actually there's lots to do, and there's lots to recognize and pay attention to, and what is going on, because the previous mode of attention, the dispersed mode of attention, despite its seeming peacefulness, is not really resolving, reconciling, or dealing with the problems that we face, and we are still facing problems. And it hasn't yet harmonized peripheral awareness and focused attention, which we'll see is what we are on our way to in the last mode of attention. But first we go through scattered attention. Well, I say first, there is a general order here, but not necessarily. I think you can enter into these different modes of attention in many different orders. Like I'm saying, with divided attention being a juncture point into the other modes of attention, but you may spontaneously arrive at any of these modes of attention from any previous mode of attention. But if we were to be following like the stages of insight and that kind of linear map, then, like I said, single pointed attention correlates with arising and passing stage and that peak experience and sort of second jhana. And then dispersed attention is more the dukkha jhanas, the dark night is called, going through that territory where we lose our specificity, detail. And and then scattered attention is about more the end of the dark night, the sort of desire for deliverance and reobservation stage. More or less. So to find scattered attention, I want you to try to notice, you may even noting is good for this, lots of different objects in experience, going from each of the different sense modalities, from seeing to hearing to feeling to smelling to tasting to thinking, from sensation from head to elbow to toe to back, from inner sounds to outer sounds, and not lingering on any one, and just sprinkling attention, scattering it all over the place, left to right, up and down, back and forth. Right, and so it has a kind of frantic energy to it. By thinking in this way, it'd be quite almost like trying to connect all the dots. in the process of connecting dots, hasn't yet seen the bigger picture, but is still in that, almost there's could be like a manicness, a mania to, oh my God, this, from this to that, it's all connected. Or at least this thing is connected to that thing is connected to the next thing, right? So it sounds kind of mad as a mode of attention, but you can have great insight and equanimity with this mode of attention as well. It's not something to be avoided or skip past. You can do fast-paced noting with this mode of attention and pick up a lot of detail in a short amount of time, which helps you collect more data about experience, which will lead to greater uncovering and seeing the bigger picture. There's a lot of utility in this mode of attention. And learning to acclimatize this mode of attention and training in this way can even lends itself to being amenable to breaking through into flow, which will be the next mode of attention. But before we go there, I want you to really get a good taste of this mode by doing some noting. You can just kind of do a simple see, hear, feel, for example, and go quick and don't linger too long. Feel, see, feel, see, feel, hear, feel, see, hear, feel, see, feel, see, hear, feel. By training in this mode of attention, being comfortable with it, we can increase our baseline metacognitive frame rate to perceive faster, more minute comings and goings within the mind, right? Which lends itself to having greater discernment and deeper realization. But I understand how it's not everyone's cup of tea, right? But can you learn to have equanimity in all these modes of attention? Can you condition your mind to develop equanimity with all these modes of attention? Okay, and lastly, the sixth and final main mode of attention that I'm highlighting here, I call uniform attention. And this is when the mind harmonizes both focused attention and peripheral awareness. And so you get the best of both worlds in terms of a broad, open awareness with great sensory clarity, with detail. So you're kind of taking in the whole range of experience, but with a lot of detail as well, in high fidelity. It won't be quite as much as with single-pointed attention, but then you are seeing the broader picture, the bigger picture. It can be difficult to immediately engage this mode of attention, to get into it, to unlock it. And I think actually this is the rarest of all the modes of attention. Most people don't get into this state of mind because this is to, in stages of insight terms, this is to have broken through into equanimity. So many people will have, beginner's mind and stuff like that, and then a peak experience, and then a spiritual high, spiritual low, and then kind of just be cycling around those, but not continue and break through into the later stage of equanimity, where we have this uniform attention and this kind of effortless, open and awake, clear state of mind. In some respects, for insight practice, this is such a treasure of a state of mind to achieve. And once you know that you're in it, you recognize you're in it, that's a great place to then do insight practice from. Because with the harmonization of focused attention and peripheral awareness and seeing the bigger picture with the detail, with the clarity at the same time, our mind is starting at least to really reconcile and see the non-separation between what were seemingly two opposites, a duality beforehand. And from this mode of attention, this is where holistic thinking comes in. So transcending partisanship, thesis, antithesis to synthesis. So a lot of people, right, when they're debating politics or philosophy or any point, right, they don't reach this holistic stage. They don't have this mode of attention in thinking terms. Right? It can be hard to unlock. And I think there's something to be said about if you unlock this mode of attention through one sense modality, it's much more likely to, especially with this uniform attention, to proliferate into the other sense modalities as well. The things are much more synergistic and a sense of collectedness. And it's a kind of an inbuilt feature of it is it comes with more equanimity. So the equanimity stage of insight and the fourth jhana share this mode of attention with the stage of insight being a more longer lasting, spontaneous phase that someone enters into for a period of time in their life. And the fourth jhana being a much, much more short-lived, kind of purposely cultivated concentration state of mind. And then we can even go a bit more refined in that the fifth jhana, which is boundless space, is like uniform attention. So it's the same kind of attentional mode as the fourth jhana, and the formless jhanas, so jhana 5, 6, 7, and 8, all have this uniform attentional mode, but with sub-attentional modes in them. So the fifth jhana, boundless space, is uniform attention with dispersed attention. And then sixth jhana, boundless consciousness, is like uniform attention with uniform attention. Like doubly uniform attention. And then seventh jhana, nothingness, is actually uniform attention with single-pointed attentional mode. And then eighth jhana, neither perception nor non-perception, it's hard to even say what that is. It's like, I don't know about that one. It's kind of hard to say at that point. So depending on how much sort of detail you want to analyze these things through, which again is to like take on a very sort of meta single-pointed attentional mode or even scattered attention mindset, you could find these modes of attention with sub-modes of attention and then meta modes of attention. If your kind of meta mode of attention is a more kind of airy-fairy dispersed attention, and that's kind of mindset, then you don't want to really analyze things in fine-grained detail and really concretely understand the different concepts or ways of splitting and parsing things apart. And that's okay. That's okay. And it's also not a privileged position either. So it's all fair dues. So there's something to be said about, okay, breaking through into the stage and then realizing deeper equanimity, but can we also find what equanimity we can transpire into the other modes of attention? Because it's a hard mode of attention to achieve, there's not really one particular exercise I can so immediately ask you to do to get into this mode of attention. It's going to come when it comes, and often through going through quite a lot of practice. You might find that you spontaneously break through into this mode of attention after a week and a half on meditation retreat. Really. But to try, see what you can, I will suggest become aware of focused attention and peripheral awareness, and see if you can, in our attempt here, top down, imitate the mode by noticing the qualities that we like. So it's that deep relaxation and open and broad awareness, and noticing the spaciousness with a retention of the detail and being awake, clear-headed, lucid, like this, and very non-reactive. See if you can find that. In trying to, you may be going into scattered mode of attention or divided attention or dispersed attention even. See if you can find this uniform attention. So it just takes some time to appreciate uniform attention to whatever degree we have access to it. Even simply understanding what I'm saying, what I'm pointing to, can help facilitate the unlocking of that mode of attention, even if it's not directly being experienced right now. And because definitionally this is an equanimous state of mind, this comes with a lot of equanimity. People can make this the goal, like, okay, I need to just be in sort of holistic, uniform attention mode, deep equanimity all the time, which, ironically is to kind of swing back into single-pointed attention mode, at least conceptually, at least mentally, in sort of the thought sense, to reinterpret these modes. Notice that transition can happen where, again, I don't think there is a goal here. I think we naturally cycle through these different modes of attention. And I want to finish by quoting a passage from The Master and His Emissary by Ian McGilchrist, a book about the divided brain, the two hemispheres, left and right hemispheres of the brain. Quote, "Attention is not just another function alongside other cognitive functions. Its ontological status is of something prior to functions and even to things. The kind of attention we bring to bear on the world changes the nature of the world we attend to, the very nature of the world in which those functions would be carried out, and in which those things would exist. Attention changes what kind of thing comes into being for us. In that way it changes the world. If you are my friend, the way in which I attend to you will be different from the way in which I would attend to you if you were my employer, my patient, the suspect in a crime I am investigating, my lover, my aunt, a body waiting to be dissected. In all these circumstances, except the last, you will also have a quite different experience not just of me, but of yourself. You would feel changed if I changed the type of my attention, and yet nothing objectively has changed. So it is, not just with the human world, but with everything with which we come into contact. A mountain that is a landmark to a navigator, a source of wealth to the prospector, a many-textured form to a painter, or to another the dwelling place of the gods, is changed by the attention given to it. There is no real mountain which can be distinguished from these, no one way of thinking which reveals the true mountain. Science, however, purports to be uncovering such a reality. Its apparently value-free descriptions are assumed to deliver the truth about the object onto which our feelings and desires are later painted. Yet this highly objective stance, this view from nowhere, to use Nagel's phrase, is itself value-laden. It is just one particular way of looking at things, a way which privileges detachment, a lack of commitment of the viewer to the object viewed. For some purposes this can be undeniably useful, but its use in such causes does not make it truer or more real, closer to the nature of things. Attention also changes who we who are doing the attending. Our knowledge of neurobiology and of neuropsychology shows that by attending to someone else performing an action, and even by thinking about them doing so, even in fact by thinking about certain sorts of people at all, we become objectively, measurably more like them in how we behave, think, and feel. Through the direction and nature of our attention, we prove ourselves to be partners in creation, both of the world and of ourselves. In keeping with this, attention is inescapably bound up with value. Unlike what we conceive as cognitive functions, which are neutral in this respect, values enter through the way in which those functions are exercised. They can be used in different ways for different purposes to different ends. Attention, however, intrinsically is a way in which, not a thing. It is intrinsically a relationship, not a brute fact. It is a howness, a something between, an aspect of consciousness itself, not a whatness, a thing in itself, an object of consciousness. It brings into being a world, and with it, depending on its nature, a set of values. Thank you for listening and for paying attention.